Hey guys, how's it going? Today's video is going to be my 2020 reading stats. I have graphs and pie charts and numbers to throw at you and I am so excited. I do want to say first, this is my first video I'm filming with my new camera, so if anything is a little bit wonky, I'm still learning everything there is to learn about it, so bear with me, I'm doing my best. Alright, I have scooched over, I have room to put my graphs and charts, so let's get into it. First, I read 101 books in 2020. I read the 100th book and I was really determined to read that one last book so I could say I read over 100 books. That came to a total of 34,608 pages. Now I will say that for most audiobooks, I put in the number of pages that the book would have had just because it's easier for me to track it that way and I just like knowing. The exception is there were some audiobooks that I read that were like only available in audiobook, like Audible originals. Those don't have a page count, so I just left those ones blank, but roughly 34,000. And speaking of audiobooks, I listened to a total of 506 hours, 12 minutes, and 33 seconds of audiobooks, which, when you look at it that way, is a little bit bonkers. I was the kind of person that it took me a while to get into audiobooks because I feel like I had to kind of practice being able to retain auditory information because I'm very much a visual person and I just sometimes have trouble focusing if I'm only listening to something, but I ended up really getting a lot of practice in and really enjoying audiobooks, and I loved listening to them like on the walk to work or if I'm just, doing the dishes, cleaning the house, something that I'm moving around to so many different rooms or just I'm not staying in the same spot, so it doesn't make sense for me to be watching something. And sometimes I listen to music, sometimes I listen to an audiobook, and it's just been really nice. For books that I bought, I really didn't do much tracking of them this year, but I bought 47 books, 20 of them I have already read, 27 of them I have not gotten to yet. Some other really quick numbers. As of filming this, I have reviewed 42 of the books that I read. There are a couple that I have like notes written up for reviews, I just haven't like made them into a cohesive paragraph and actually posted them. So I do expect that number to go up maybe to about 50, but right now that's 42, which I'm happy with. 7 of the books were arcs, 6 of them were rereads, which is another cool thing because I used to not really be a person that's into rereads because there's just so many books that I haven't read yet that sometimes the thought of rereading a book, I don't know, it just felt kind of stressful to me, but I feel like I've kind of chilled out about a lot of things, which is weird because 2020 is like so not chill, but regardless. And 7 of those books were from fellow author tubers. Moving on to maybe my favorite thing, some pie charts. 59 of the books that I read this year were standalones and 42 of them were part of a series. Usually my number for series is a little bit higher than that, actually quite a bit higher than that, because usually I'm more of a series person, and also once I read one book from a series, I usually continue the whole series. So when I start reading one book, there's like 5 there, versus a standalone, obviously there's 1, hence standalone. For author gender, I read from 64 women, 30 men, 5 people that were non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid. Some of the authors I found, they kind of identified as more than one term, so I just put them together because it just made the most sense for me and it was easier that way. And one book was co-authored by both a man and a woman. I'm fairly happy with this graph, but I would like to increase my non-binary area. Moving on to author's race, this one I'm a little bit disappointed in myself in. I feel like I could have done a lot better and it's just something that I wasn't as mindful about as I should have been. 73 of the books that I read were from white authors, 13 were from Asian authors, 11 were from black authors, 1 was from a Hispanic author, 1 was from an indigenous author, and 2 I wasn't able to find. So honestly, I'm really unhappy with this stat. Almost 75% white authors is much too many, but 2021, it is on my goals list of something to be focused on. For country where the author is from, this is another stat that I'm not happy with, but I'm not surprised about. 65 of them were from the US, 25 of them were across the UK, 6 of them were from Canada, and then at 1 apiece, Denmark, Nigeria, Australia, New Zealand, and the Middle East. I know that the Middle East isn't a country, but this is Arabian Nights Tales of 1001 Nights, which if you don't know is a collection of stories from across the Middle East. So I just put them all into that category and that was the only one, so I just kept it like that. So I'm not that bad at geography, but if you're wondering, that's why. Next year, I would like to read from more Canadian authors because just as a Canadian, that's something that's important to me, but I'd also like to read from authors from different countries and more than just one author from each country. Like, I'd like to get a more well-rounded graph for next year. So I have high hopes in reading, at least for 2021. These next couple are ones that I really don't have any specific intention with where I want to be. I'm just mostly curious to see. So first is the year that the book was originally published. I have 11 books that were pre-1900s, 11 books between 1900 and the 1980s, 2 books from the 1990s, 6 books from 2000 to 2009, 10 books from 2010 to 2015, 32 books from 2016 to 2018, 14 books from 2019, and 15 books from 2020. This is a higher year for 2020 release. I just realized. Obviously, this is the most 2020 releases I've read in any year. I mean, this is... What I meant is this the year that I read the most books that came out that year. And again, that's because I've been using my library so much. I don't tend to buy new release books that often, but because I was using my library so much, that's why there's more from the current year than there usually is. Again, I don't have any goals of where I want to be in this. I do like having it somewhat spread out, but yeah, it's just fun to track, and because there's so many, the colors on the graph are really nice. Another one with no specific goals is the amount of pages that the book has. 8 of them were under 100 pages, 3 of them were between 100 and 150, 4 of them were 150 to 200, 23 of them were 200 to 300, 34 of them were 300 to 350, 16 of them were 450 to 600, 6 of them were 600 to 800, and 7 of them were over 800 pages. Honestly, page count is something that I never really care about. It's just interesting to track, and again, the graph is really pretty. Genre is another one that I feel like is more different than usual this year, and again, that's mostly from my library. The highest category was still fantasy at 39 books, but usually the lead is a lot more drastic than that. 15 of the books that I read were contemporary, 13 were classics, 8 of them were children, 7 of them were mystery, 7 of them were nonfiction, 6 science fiction, 5 historical fiction, and 1 humor. Usually I would say historical fiction is a bigger category for me. The ones that are abnormal is definitely contemporary. Like 15 is a really high number for me. I'm not usually the kind of person that gravitates towards contemporary. And again, that is all thanks to my local library, because with my library, I'm able to try out books that I'm not necessarily curious enough about to buy or spend money on, but because I was able to get them from my library, I was able to try other things. And classics is higher than normal at 13. I would say I usually read maybe 5 or 6 classics a year. The reason why this one is higher than normal is because I was prioritizing reading my physical TBR, or at least trying to, and a lot of the books that I own are classics that I just owned and never read, so I was just trying to knock some of those off my list. So yeah, the graph is definitely different than usual this year. I'm really curious to see next year if things kind of go back to normal, or if my reading tastes are evolving, or if it's just I happen to gravitate towards certain books. That's why I love stats and graphs. I love just being able to see how things change and look back on them, and it's the best. For age group, 52 of them were adult, 37 were YA, and 12 of them were children. Usually adult is a lot more than that. Again, YA, the library. I think also being on BookTube, a lot of the bigger booktubers that I follow read a lot of YA, so I'm exposed to more YA. Usually, like if I'm going to the bookstore, I tend to look in the adult section, and I just never really think to look at YA, but because I'm being exposed to all these other books, I'm reading books that I wouldn't have come across otherwise. And even though I definitely still prefer adult, I think a lot of YA has a lot of tropes that I just personally don't like, and honestly, I find teenage characters very annoying most of the time. But again, I'm trying things, I'm narrowing down my taste, I'm confirming what I don't like, and some things I'm realizing that I do like that I didn't think I did. So learning and growing as people. Actually, this one might be the most drastic change. So method for how I read the books. 48 of them were physical, 40 of them were audiobook, and 13 were ebook. I usually read almost exclusively physical books, but like I was saying, this year I really got into audiobooks, and I really learned how to be able to read an audiobook and appreciate it, and I don't know, it's like a whole new world open for me, as dramatic as that sounds. This is another one that I don't really have a preference one way or the other, but it's just really cool to track. And yeah, I was surprised when I realized how many audiobooks I read this year. Like, it's very close to the amount of physical books I read, which is bonkers, but really kind of cool. For the source of where I got the books, this is one that I need to improve for next year, but 52 of the books I read were ones that I physically owned, which is more than half. Barely, but more than half. 25 of them were from the library, 11 of them were from Audible, 6 of them were gifts, 4 of them were ARCs, and 3 of them I already had on my e-reader. Like I said, one of my biggest goals is to get my physical TBR down, so I need to read more of my physically owned books, but the library is just so great and so convenient. For time to complete the books, this one, again, is one of my favorites. 38 of the books, I finished them the same day I started them. I read them all within one day, which is super exciting to me because it just means usually that I really enjoyed the book and I just couldn't put it down. So that's always a number that I really like seeing when it's really high. Not necessarily because I'm competitive and want to read books fast, but because if I read books fast, I probably really liked them. Then I read 11 books within 2 days, 10 books within 3 days, 24 books between 4 and 7 days, 12 books between 8 and 14 days, 5 books between 15 and 30 days, and 1 book in over 30 days. And if you're wondering, that was Eyes of Horus by Joan Grant, which took me 45 days to read because I was just not enjoying it at all and was really stubborn and did not want to DNF it, but oh boy. Which brings us perfectly to the next one, which is ratings. Now for this one, I do round up, so if like it's 9.5, I categorize it as a 10. So if you're wondering, that's why there's no decimals in here. But I read 3 books that I gave 3 stars, 7 books that I gave 4 stars, 4 books that I gave 5 stars, 2 books that I gave 6 stars, and then 16 books that I gave 7 stars, 20 books that I gave 8 stars, 33 books that I gave 9 stars, and 14 books that I gave 10 stars. Which means I had an amazing reading year. That means that 67 of those were 8 stars or higher, and 83 were 7 stars or higher. That is amazing. Not only did I have a good year quantity-wise, I had a really good year quality-wise, which just makes me happy. This last one is a newer one that I'm tracking, and I really don't know where I want to be with it. So this is out of the books that I read that I physically owned, how many of them I owned for more than a year and less than a year. So 36 of them, which was 69.2%, I owned for less than a year, and 16 of them, which is 30.8%, I owned for more than a year. I don't know where I want to be. I guess if I don't know, I should probably aim for the middle, because if I buy a book, in my head I should be prioritizing it faster, because if I bought it, it means I was excited about it or I wanted to read it, so I should try to get to it. But also, I don't want books just sitting on my shelves for a million years, so I do want to also prioritize books that have been on my shelf for a long time. Again, I just track it because I'm curious, not because I have a specific target in mind or if I have any specific thoughts. I just get curious and want to see numbers. And finally, I'm going to end on a month-by-month breakdown of how many books I read each month. In January, I read 6 books. In February, I read 7 books. In March, I read 13 books. April was 8. May was 11. June was 10. July was 6. August was 4. September was 8. October was 9. November was 10. December was 9. This I'm really not too surprised about. January is usually not a great reading month for me, which is also why, in case you noticed, I didn't post a January TBR, because just having reading plans in January, just for some reason, is really overwhelming for me. But because I don't have reading plans, it takes me a while to decide when I read, and I just overthink everything. So, long story short, this is low, but that's really normal for me. And then July and August, July being 6 and August being 4, if you don't know, early on in July, Spock got outside and was missing for 3 months, but she's home now, she's safe and sound, she got her weight back up, she's healthy. But yeah, I was really stressed out and I spent almost all of my free time out looking for my cat or putting up more lost cat posters. Reading was really, really low on my priority list, so I'm really not at all surprised with those numbers. November is higher than I expected with 10 books. Usually with NaNoWriMo, I don't do as much reading, so 10 books is a lot higher than it usually is in November. Usually it's like less than 5. So all in all, again, really good reading year. So there you have it. Those were all of my 2020 reading stats. I'm really happy with most of those stats. Some of them need to be improved, but that is what 2021 is for. If there's anything that you guys track that I don't, or anything that you guys think that I should add to the list, definitely let me know in the comments because I'd be super curious. And again, I love stats, graphs, numbers, etc. But that is going to be all for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please click the like button to let me know, and subscribe to stay up to date with the rest of my videos. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, usually reading or writing related. So I hope to see you guys next time, and until then, have a great day. Bye!